Some in my party have distorted this belief in peace through strength into a misguided belief that we should project strength through war. Even when we've tried through good intentions to make the world a better place, our actions have often backfired.
Rand Paul, and by my standards, as I look at his philosophy, is basically an isolationist.
Senator Rand Paul plus former Vice President Dick Cheney just moments ago. The roundtable is here now. Minnesota Congressman Keith Ellison, Illinois Congressman Adam Kinzinger, ABC's chief foreign correspondent Terry Moran, who is just back from Iraq, and Greta Van Susteren from Fox News. So, Congressman Kinzinger, I want to ask you, Republican, are you a Cheney Republican or a Rand Paul Republican when it comes
I'm a
to
defense
policy?
Republican. Look, I don't agree with Rand on a lot of his foreign policy positions. I think a few years ago he put out a budget proposal that cut our military in half, which is something very frightening to me as a military guy myself, and I know that this is a significant thing. So I would consider myself a defense Republican.
Some say he's the front runner for the nomination.
No, I don't think he is. I mean, look, he represents a very important part of our party, kind of that libertarian viewpoint. But there's a lot of different parts of our party. And one of the things that's made us very strong, and I think is our defining issue, is the fact that we understand that a strong United States of America stops things like a Russian incursion, stops things like global terrorism, and fills a vacuum that would otherwise be filled by bad actors.
So, Congressman, what was your take on Cheney?
Well, quite frankly, I mean, why don't we go get the guy who wrecked the XL Valdez and ask him about, how to run an oil tanker? I mean, there couldn't be a worse person to offer views on what to do next. And by the way, he didn't offer views on what to do next. There is one very slight sliver that I think Cheney had something going, and that is broadening this thing. But I think diplomatically we've got to widen it. We've got to get the Gulf countries, and I believe Iran, in some sort of a conversation about how to pull their proxies back, which I think is the key to this thing. Personally, I think if we just go using military power right off the bat, there is
Are you okay with what the president's ordered now, sending over those 300 or up to 300 special operators?
I don't know what they're going to do. If I knew more about it, I might be for it. But at this point, it's just weird. I just don't get it. But my point is, here's the real thing. Without the diplomatic engagement, if you use military power, you run the risk of driving ISIS and the Sunni population together. Our goal should be to separate them, to isolate ISIS. And to do that, you've got to have those Gulf countries, and you've got to say, understanding that the Sunni population is somehow going to be cut into government, somehow going to have a role.
And Terry, you were just over there. I mean, it's already happening. I mean, ISIS doesn't have much of a military force itself. They have some support out in the...
Well, they're actually a very wealthy and well-organized jihadist extremist group, but after spending 10 days up in northern Iraq, every single day, the overwhelming feeling I got talking to people was they've given up. They've given up on Iraq. They've given up on each other. The army won't fight for the nation. The government won't govern for the nation. And increasingly, I had the feeling that the people don't believe in the nation as it is currently constituted anymore. They believe in their groups.
Greta?
Well, the problem that we have here is that, everyone admits it's a huge mess, but none of our leaders have told us what we're going to get. With these 300 advisors, what are we getting? Are we starting a mission creep? Look, when JFK was president, we had 12,000 advisors. 5 years later, we had 500,000 troops in Vietnam. And I don't think we've really identified, what we're going to get, which is our national interest in this. And I think that's got to be sold to the American people so that the American people get behind whatever we do. Right now, we just look like we're flailing.
Jonathan, you asked me what kind of a Republican I was. Let's talk about what we ought to do in Iraq. I was at this table in January when ISIS took over Fallujah, and I said, we have to begin airstrikes. This is going to grow. This is dead serious. And everybody at the table kind of chuckled because they thought that was just warmonger talk. The reality is, what we're watching in Iraq right now is the worst case scenario. I can't imagine much worse happening in Iraq. And so I look at this and say, advisors and special ops will stiffen the spine of the Iraqi military units. Airstrikes for ISIS units in the open to button them down where they're at now and work the political solution in Iraq, which we have to work, but give them the opportunity to get that taken care of and then begin to push out and push ISIS out. And by the way, this also goes into Syria, so I think ISIS camps in Syria ought to be free-reign targets too.
But Adam, if you are right, you've got to focus on the political reality that you just mentioned. Because, the thing is, these folks got sponsors here, right? There are proxies fighting from the Gulfies and the Iranian regime, and we've got to make sure, we've got to get in there diplomatically to say, look, if you guys can get Maliki or tolerate Maliki leaving, we could try to stabilize this country. You cut the Sunnis in, and before you know it, you can have some stability. If you just start blasting in there, I think that you just exacerbate the civil war. So you could be right, but without a strong diplomatic effort to try to manage the regional partners.
Terry, this is what we've been
started
trying. I mean, we've been trying to do this for years.
We have. The political elite in Baghdad has failed. And the feeling throughout the country is those guys, not just Maliki, those guys can't do it. If the United States launches airstrikes or military operations without some very dramatic restructuring of the leadership of Iraq, we will be the Shia Air Force.
How do we do that, though? How do you do that, though? How do we change their leadership now?
We tried, and we can't.
That's
they have
the
to
point.
realize.
Well, wait a minute. Grand
Ayatollah
Sistani has already started to signal that Maliki's not the guy. There are a lot of people who are coming to the realization that there's got to be a change. You've got to have a more inclusive government. Iraqis are saying this. We should support that effort and help us more stable political environment.
Why are we starting this right now? We're acting like this ISIS thing's just brand new. I mean, this started, as I said, in January.
But that's like what Vice President Cheney said, though, is that we're looking backwards. We have this problem now. We can all go back
6 months back.
No, or 6 months back, whatever. No matter what we should have done before, we got to deal with what we have now.